Maybe not. There we are. It was a bit of a delay there on that start, which is always weird. That's part of behind the scenes when you're doing live streams, is there's a bit of buffering at the beginning. And for good editing, to get that nice beginning on that video with the transition, you have to kind of do this. And there.
We got it down.
It's feeling really stupid. And that was longer than normal. So you're doing that and then you start doing this. Probably more than anybody wanted to know. Anyway, good morning, everybody. My name is Bryan Armentrout with the Food Leadership Group, and this, of course, is Food Safety Chat Live, where we live stream every Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, and we talk about all things food safety. And I get to bring on experts who work in this space with me, and we get to talk with you and answer your questions. And part of what's really fun about this is the community we built with this. And I know that for you, Jill and Tia, same thing with your business, with Catalyst Food Leaders as well. And it's very gratifying because I think part of what we've done in our spaces is kind of broken out of that, oh, I'm working in quality, I'm all by myself in the company, and I feel like it's me against the world. And that's no fun. Mm-hmm. And we get to meet amazing people like Elena. Good morning.
Hi, Elena.
And Cheryl, of course. And all those fun things that we're doing. And all of that. So with that, of course, my guests today are Jill and Tia from CatalystFoodLeaders.com, which I think is a new name, isn't it? What's that?
It is. Yep. Well, we love food safety, and a lot of our background is food safety, but being in food, what we found was that more than half the people that we serve and our clients are not in food safety. They're in R&D, they're in operations, they're in sales, they're in purchasing, they're in other areas, they're in convenience stores, they're in retail, they're in like food service all across.
Consulting, admins, we had so many different people in food.
Yep. So we wanted to shift to better reflect, like, who do we all serve? Because people are like, you just do food safety. We're like, no, we do way more than food safety.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's smart. That's a really good distinction, because part of what we talk about here on the chat too is food safety is company wide. Procurement and operations, legal, marketing, everybody who touches the product in some way is involved with food safety. So good move. Here at the end of the chat as well, I've got your website pulled up, and we'll put that in for everybody to check out. Which I'm going to embarrass you a little bit, Jill. Jill did an amazing job. She built, when you go out there and take a look at this, she built this website. So that's not easy. So congratulations.
Thank you.
See, I told you I'd embarrass you a little.
You did. This is what we do in food, right? We wear all different hats. And if we don't know that skill, we figure out, do we learn it or do we get help? And I did a little of all of it. So
you're right.
You gotta wear a lot of hats, that's for sure.
I know, look at all these people. Morgan, Corey, Elena, Chris, Joe.
Hello, good morning.
Isn't it so cool? We're getting, with these communities that we're building, we now know, it's just not like a little LinkedIn picture, a little thumbnail and stuff like that. We actually know who these people are, which is really cool.
Yes.
And some of them come on our shows. Elena did an amazing job on mine, and I saw her on yours.
She was on our show this week.
You, Elena.
Yeah.
Definitely somebody to watch.
Yes. It was a fantastic conversation.
It was really good. And let's see, so on Elena's little comment there, she's got a little snowman and some snow. So definitely here. More down, I'm in Loveland, Colorado, which is north of Denver, but I'm seeing on the news this morning that they're getting some snow down that way. So stay warm, Elena. Up here, it's 28 degrees. And in typical Colorado fashion, ladies, by Sunday, Monday, it's going to be in the 60s.
Whoa.
Summer. Hello, summer.
Yep.
Oh, that's Minnesota summer. Okay.
Exactly.
Spring for you, I suppose.
And so is it pretty chilly up there in Minnesota for you, Jill? Or?
We are coming to a warm streak, but this week we had, I think with wind chills, it was like minus 34, minus 31. That was Monday, Tuesday, a little bit of Wednesday, but we're going to be like 20 today. Nice. Super exciting. It's a heat wave. We're hitting the heat wave.
50-degree change. And I remember, there's nothing worse when it's really super cold like that, is that worry that your pipes are going to freeze. That's
that's true.
That's the biggest problem. And Jill, how's your weather in Maryland?
Me, I should not even complain because of how cold you all are, but we are in the 30s and it is like cold to the bone. So there's snow happening around us. We got a little snow flurries yesterday, but snow is happening around us. So I think that's bringing like this chill. But we're in the 30s. I think we're gonna get maybe in the 50s next week when the heat wave is sort of coming through.
So it's kind of moving through for all of us then. Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready for summer though.
Yeah, me too. The weird thing in Colorado is we get most of our snow in March, April, even into May. So
interesting.
You think you're through it, and then it gets you.
Right, exactly.
It's all good. We have what we have.
That's right.
Absolutely. Only one day at a time. So everybody, please join us for a drink of your favorite beverage.
Yes.
Cheers.
Cheers. I'm calling out Tennessee. Tim, you're in Tennessee.
I know, Tim. Yes.
Nice. Gotta love the Vols. All right. I hate to do this to you, but here it comes.
We have things to talk about.
We do.
We do. Gotta do the dad joke first. Gotta do the dad joke. Okay, here we go. Jill and Tia, if you aren't blind, what is the worst thing that you can read in Braille?
I don't know. Any guesses in the chat?
All right. Do not touch.
I'm not sure what's worse, the answer or the sound effect.
Oh no!
Wow.
They're all perfect.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
That's if someone's out there collecting dad jokes, I think that's a good one.
There's two. So I found an awesome source for dad jokes on YouTube. There's two guys, and they sit in like a garage, and they have like two chairs, and they have like a cooler there. You know, so it's like a couple bros hanging out type situation, and they just absolutely laugh their asses off at their own jokes, and that's the best part because one guy's kind of got that laugh. He goes like that. That's the best part of the jokes, but they tell some really good ones. And so credit to them for that dad joke brought to you by those guys today.
That's awesome. Morgan's like, you're deferring to the chat. Hey, I'm using my resources around me.
There you go.
That one's done. Phone a friend. No.
So when we were coming up with our topic on Monday, the title we came up with was Leadership During Times of Crisis and Chaos. And we've got some crisis and chaos going on right now, don't we? There's all kinds of moving parts going on. I mean, and it even predates the current administration with Trump. I mean, a lot of the reorganization with FDA started before this.
Oh, yes.
And getting a hold of FDA, if you had an issue with them, one of my clients had an issue we were working through with some labeling, and it was really hard. They weren't responding. And organizations within FDA that we've been used to forever all of a sudden said, oh, we're no longer called CIFSAN, we're called something else. And we're like, okay, well, what are you called? And they're like, we don't know. And pretty much all communication has kind of stopped, and that's kind of weird. And we're working through all of this, and I think it's kind of easy to be overwhelmed and say right, and kind of that deer in the headlights type thing and you don't do anything because you're not sure which way to go. And that's kind of our subject for today. So we're kind of be wide roaming here, and I would love to hear in the comments as well, guys. What things are you worried about? Because there's a lot of different things. And that's kind of, I think, part of our nature when you work in quality and food safety and things like this, right? We're worriers. We're all right, what's going to happen? What are the things that we need to worry about? What's this new guidance document mean for us? Yeah. All of these type of things. And here's the interesting piece, and I think this really comes into the people side of what we do, is within what we do, within organizations, we're really seen as the source of stability. and continuity. And we have the standards. Here's what these are. Here's what we need to do.
Yeah.
And this tends to magnify the more serious the issues are. So from my personal experience, I know that because I've gone through and managed large class 1 recalls, you're essentially running the company in those type of situations. Everybody is looking for you for that leadership and guidance. And that stability is super important. And you need to recognize that that's burden and that mantle falls to you in those situations. And it's not even necessarily those big, oh my God type situations. It's day to day as well too, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. You know, when there is chaos or even perceived chaos, that's when leadership matters the most. It's like all the things you've been practicing as a leader, right? All the relationship building, all the strategy and vision you've been putting together, all the conflict management. Like this is when it pays off if you've been doing the work. And we know because we created Catalyst and we have worked with our clients and we've talked to so many food organizations, is that we just don't prioritize leadership development the way that we should in the industry. And when things happen, right, when chaos around us happens, we're humans, right? We have things happening in our personal lives, we have things happening at work. And if we haven't been practicing leadership skills and soft skills or human skills, then we will default back to, right, our natural human behavior, which is to right? To scream and run around with our heads cut off, like our heads are cut off, or we hide, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or we're ready to fight. You know, we're ready to do all of those natural reactions unless we have that development we've been practicing, right? And it's now it's basically a competency, is the way that we show up every day. And unfortunately, we haven't been doing that work. And as more and more chaos comes, as silence continues, right? Even from our regulatory bodies, is just for the organizations that have been investing in it, we will see that they're in a better position. For the ones that are currently investing in it or trying to now, right? It's a reaction, but they're getting what they need. And then there's ones that won't. And we will also see what happens in those situations. Yeah,
that's a good point. And that I want to emphasize what you had said there as well, because the crisis can also become an opportunity. This is your opportunity to step up as a leader. If there's a crisis going on in the organization, people are, they're looking around for somebody to step up. And you just can't go into it blindly. You have to do like everything else that is done in life that you're successful at, and that's practice and have an understanding in those situations. And, the perfect example of that is a recall situation. Most companies don't practice. They don't get together their crisis team and say, okay, well, we have this scenario. Let's work through it and see how we respond to this. Mm-hmm. So it's just like anything in life, basketball teams or anything. You have to practice these things so that if it does happen in real life, you're prepared. Mm-hmm. And that's critical. And so many people just say, oh, we'll deal with it. It happens. Big mistake.
Big mistake, yeah.
Well, I think even recognizing some of the signs when you're in these moments of uncertainty or crisis. So I think about when I hear people say, gosh, I wish someone would give us communication. I wish someone would know this. I wish we had heard this sooner. Or even we do that ourselves. Like, I wish leadership would tell us more about this. Or I think every time we step into that space, that's a great training ground to go, maybe I'm the someone. How can I be the someone? And you may not know necessarily what that all will look like, but if you're feeling a need for, I need some communication, I think, Bryan, like you said, that's a great time for you to think, can I step into this spot and help fill that? And how would that look? And how would I do that?
Absolutely. And one of the things that I learned from those recalls is that it's really important to have a person who handles the communication. Because what I found during the first issue that I had is, so I was trying to run the recall and everybody was coming to me for information. So the CEO is like, what's going on? What's going on? And, the owners of the company, what's going on? What's going on? And FDA is trying to get me on the phone. And as a result, I couldn't get anything done because all I was doing was trying to update and meet the demands of the people who were asking me. I'm like, okay, in the future, I'm going to have essentially kind of like at the White House, right, where you have the press secretary who comes out. I need to have that person who then communicates. And to your point, Jill, in those type of situations, you can't over communicate, right? The more information you can feed to the organization to let them know what's going on, the lower you're going to be able to keep that stress level. I remember an issue. There was a recall in Nevada here a few years ago, pretty serious, with some alkaline water. This big trend with the alkaline water, and they screwed it up. And people were getting sick, and some people had to have surgeries on their liver. It was pretty bad.
Wow.
And they actually, the local news station got one of the employees on the TV and interviewed him. He's like, "Oh yeah, I mixed the batches and I wasn't quite sure what to do, so my boss just told me to add some more stuff."
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I mean, if you're Bill Marler in the court case, that's all you got to do now is play that tape in court and say, "All right, we're done."
Right. You're absolutely right about that. And people sometimes, we downplay that communication is so important. It's funny because Jill and I, we watched the Apple TV show Severance, and Jill is catching up on it, and like we watch it every week, the new season. And one thing that Jill, I love it because Jill, well, now you're done with season 1, right?
Yeah,
season 1.
Tia wanted me to watch it for like years, and I was like, no. And finally, I binge watched it. So.
And it is, I mean, just the parallels to corporate culture is, I mean, it's fantastic. But one of the things that Jill actually pointed out was that when people do not have details, we as human beings, we fill in those details of the story. So we're not going to give any spoilers, but there are people that don't really know what's going on. So they're trying to figure it out. Right. And for the things that they really don't know what it means, our brains fill in that detail. And so as leaders, it's important for us to know that if we do not give our team communication and information, then they're going to fill it in.
Yeah. And I think the other part with that is, once again, I don't want to spoil it, but the perception you may have as a leader is, why are they choosing those behaviors?
Right.
Why are they doing that? And it may not look like what you think it is. And so even being able to see through that, but it's really just this call for, or this need and want for information.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what's so interesting, because I love Severance as well.
Yeah.
And it's that mystery, right? So you've got these different layers. You've got the workers, you've got Milchek, the manager, then you've got the shadowy Swedish looking guy running stuff, the weird statues of at each level they have different information, and they're not sharing at all.
They're not sharing.
Just watching it makes you stressed out.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God, what's going to happen to him, right? And just this god awful work environment, and the fact that they killed Irving. Oh my God, no, I'm just kidding.
Oh no, I didn't get to that episode.
Right.
Oh, that's bad.
You're not listening, Jill.
Yeah.
You're not listening.
But it's the sarcasm and the overplay of like the things that we experience at work when we don't have a good culture, when we don't have leaders that are able to step into that, or even leaders like Milchek, right? A little manipulative. But really, how do you navigate these things? And that in itself is so important as we think about uncertainty and crisis.
Yeah,
those guys are insane, Tim.
Absolutely.
Not the time I want to stop watching, but now I just can't.
I know, it's amazing. Elena, you also love Severance. I'm like, we need a watch party.
Yeah,
like, we need a discussion.
Samarine always has good comments here. I often listen with intent when difficult decisions and conversations are happening to practice how I'd respond if needed to. Smart. Nothing worse than getting a direct question with nothing relevant to say. True. I'll add on to that, and this is always contextual, is sometimes it's okay to say, I don't know. Some people just can't do that, right? Their ego won't let them say, I'm not sure about that. Let's go find that out.
Yes.
That's hard for some people.
That is. You have to practice doing that. You have to practice saying, I don't know, seeing what happens, right? Like seeing what happens. Okay, it worked out. Let me try it again. Okay, let me, I should have known this information. What do I need to put in my daily routine or my weekly routine to make sure I'm up to date on this stuff? So the next question that comes, I'm more prepared for it. That's all the learning process. And if we're not practicing, then we never get to the point of, oh, let me do this a little bit differently so I'll know next time.
Exactly. And I think this gets into our next point relative to our conversation, and Breen did a good job of transitioning this for us. Thank you. Is in order for you to be that pillar of stability, that person who's seen in the organization as, here's what's going on and here's what we need to do, which is incredibly powerful. Mm-hmm. You need to be scanning the horizon and seeing what's coming, what issues are coming, and not be surprised. That's one of the sayings I would always teach my quality managers is there's one thing, and this is true pretty much, I've expanded this, but I used to just use this for plant managers, is the one rule in the plant is never surprise the plant manager. Mm-hmm. You do not want to go into her office with information that's going to, but what? Why didn't you tell me this sooner type situation? Mm-hmm. Right? Over communicate again, back to your point, Jill. You need to work on those type of situations. And part of that is looking out and scanning the horizon. And that's kind of cool about what we do in quality and food safety is we get to stick our nose in all kinds of different stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So, procurement buys stuff. Well, guess what? We need to keep an eye on that too, because we need to be looking for trends. The example I use on here is sunflower oil. Before the Ukraine war started, did I know that sunflower oil mainly comes from Ukraine? Nope, I didn't know that.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, that resource for manufacturing dried up, and everybody was scrambling to try and find alternate sources, different types of oils or different suppliers. Right. Are these people trustworthy? You need to be ahead of that curve and not be surprised. And working with those procurement teams and saying, hey, guys, seeing some trends out there relative to a particular ingredient. Maybe we want to reduce some risk in that area. Cocoa right now is going through major price increases. And so companies that have chocolate products are really hurting relative to those materials.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me. Right now, we have our technical leader boot camp cohort going on, and we just covered servant leadership, and one of the principles is foresight.
Yes,
because as leaders, strong leaders have this foresight of understanding exactly what you're saying, Bryan, on what's coming on the horizon. But that's easier said than done, right? Mm-hmm. They have that foresight because they're in those conversations, right? They're building those relationships, right? They have someone in procurement kind of saying like, oh, something's kind of happening with chocolate, or this is where we get our information from, or whatever it is, right? They have done a lot of work in the background to be able to have that foresight. Mm-hmm. It doesn't just come. No. Like for myself, I like to build relationships across multiple functions and stay close, because then I hear, right, like, what are you struggling with? What's kind of bubbling up there? What are your leaders telling you is most important? Then yes. I can have that vision on, okay, where does my team need to go? How do we need to play? Ooh, what priorities can we bubble up, right, to the list? Because I know maintenance is focusing on this, or logistics focusing on that. But a lot of times people are like, I need to look towards the horizon, but don't realize that those are actual skills that you need to build, that you need to practice, that you need to have in order for you to be able to see the horizon.
Yes. And that's an important distinction, Tia. Thank you. Is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So if I'm in quality, I don't need to subscribe to all the newsletters that the procurement people do. I don't need to that's part of their job is right. Tracking those trends. Mm-hmm. The reason I know about the cocoa situation is because I talk with procurement people, and they're like, oh, mm-hmm. cocoa, we need to plan out and hedge and figure all these things out. Then I look at that from a food safety quality standpoint and say, okay, well, we need to make sure that that's good quality cocoa, and that the heavy metal content, because cocoa can be a risk for that, is controlled, and that we're testing before we run products. So we need to be well ahead of this. And now you're working together, to your point, Tia, you're working together as a team with procurement.
Yeah. And that's something, Tia, since you mentioned boot camp, actually yesterday I was talking with someone from a boot camp, and we were talking about this challenge of like, how do you create the space though to have those conversations?
Yeah.
And that really requires us to step out of our doing mindset of like checking off the boxes to either adding the boxes that say, go spend time with these other areas, or really, being intentional about having those conversations differently than you have before. So once again, if we're doing it today and we're like, gosh, I'm not quite there, then it has to be intentional of like, what will I shift to move in the other direction? And Bryan, we talked when we got started, consistency. How do I do it consistently so that we can stay in that space?
Right.
Oh, yeah, super important. If you, especially in what we do in quality and food safety, if you are inconsistent, oh man, that's the absolute wrong message. The saying I use around that is, if you're coming to me for a decision on something, I'm running quality for a company, you should probably pretty much know what I'm going to say already, unless it's some weird one-off type situation. But for most things, it's like, okay, here's what Bryan's going to want us to do. Yep. Right. So as a result of that type of behavior, the wheels are already in motion ahead of time, right? So it speeds up the process as well.
Exactly. And I want to just call out that is human. That's human behavior. When humans, we expect consistency, right? Like we will fill in gaps because we try to understand what's going on, and we use what we know or what we think we know to fill in those gaps. And so like when someone's coming to ask you a question, they've already kind of thought about what Bryan might say based on the past. And when you shock them and say something totally different that doesn't align with what you've done before, now there's confusion, right? Now there's reasons. Well, why is Bryan saying this differently? Is he an inconsistent person? Is something else happening? Is he keeping something from me? Is he right? It could become a lot of different reasons around inconsistency, and that hurts as a leader, right? Like that hurts leadership, that hurts the people that's trying to follow that leadership. And so it's all connected, and it's all happening, right? Because we're human beings. And as humans, we have to realize, okay, this is how we would naturally respond to it. How do I respond to it as a leader to keep us focused on our goals, our path forward, right? Well-being and so forth.
Yeah. So back to our severance example, right? So the manager, Milchek, right? So he's withholding information, and as a result, the team doesn't trust him.
Exactly.
So one of the things that helps promote trust as well is promoting other people and what they do. So if you're not connected with Elena on LinkedIn, do so. She has a book club where you can read through books and everything else. And so here's a good recommendation from her, The Servant. I believe I have read that book. So thank you, Elena, for that. So yeah, that trust piece is super, super important. So all this chaos, all this crazy stuff going on, the political and regulatory world, right? If you spend any time on X, you can't keep up with all the different changes and everything that's going on. I was watching a little of CPAC, the Republican get-together type thing yesterday. And so Milei, the head of Argentina, was on the stage, and Elon Musk was on the stage, and he gave him a giant chainsaw. And Elon Musk is holding up the chainsaw and all these type of things. And it's kind of what's going on, right? And it's like, Doge is doing this, Doge is doing that. These people are laid off. I saw this morning that there's layoffs that are occurring now within the IRS. But you can't keep up all of this stuff. But you need to look at it through the lens of, okay, as we're talking about here today, the personal stuff and how this impacts us that way, but also the business side. How does all of these radical changes that are going on right now within our government, how are these impacting our work life? So as we referenced earlier, FDA, right? So imagine that you're working at FDA. How is this impacting you as someone working for that agency and your roles?
Yeah, I was just talking to someone earlier this week, and we were talking about how, like, as an industry, right, we've been asking more and more of our regulatory counterparts, right? Like inspections and this and that, right? Like we've been asking for a lot of things that really the restructuring is supposed to fix, right? Things are supposed to happen. But now, right, those people are being impacted, right? Like you said, by layoffs, by shifts. They were already impacted by a new org structure that was not happening, right? We're still trying to lean on them as a business, but those people are going through something, right? Like businesses, we talk about the organization and the business, but that is really all people. And when people are going through things personally, and this is what this is what you really learn through coaching and why we incorporate coaching into our programs. And why Severance is such a good example of corporate culture is because we are not two different people, right? We're not who we are at work and who we are at home, and we cannot separate those things. So when someone is showing up to a job, and I mean, many of us, I'm sure many of us that's been listening have been through restructuring, have been through company layoffs, have been through those things. Are you effective at work if you think your job is going away? Are you effective at work if you were already burnt out, overworked, asking the organization for stuff, and then everyone around you is now gone? Mm-hmm. So now people are coming to you and you're already overworked. You already feel burnt out. And then then someone else is trying to lean on you. Like, these are people that's going through real stuff. Yeah. And if we don't realize that, recognize that, and have some grace around it and compassion around it, and actually bring that into the way that we are leading, then we're just going to continue to stress people out and to lose people in the industry, which is already happening, right? That was already happening before what's happening now with our political landscape. We were already losing people in the industry. We were already losing people from retirement, right? And people, retiring and moving on that way. But then people not even wanting to come in the industry because we haven't figured out how to take care of our people while also growing our business. And so this is just going to compound that. And so we have to figure out, how do we continue to work and take care of our people when things are happening even outside of our control?
Right. Well, and to the point that was made earlier, it's, this is part of our evolution. This is fight or flight. You're a caveman, you're hanging out with your tribe, and another tribe comes walking up, right? You have to figure out pretty quickly, okay, friend or foe, right? I don't want to fight. Right. Better figure this out. And that mentality, it kicks in from your amygdala, and that's our nature. And so if you're at a job, and to your point, you're looking around and there's nobody there, there's nobody in that cubicle, and you're the only person, and you're like, all right, better work on my resume. Well, because you're thinking about all those things that impact you personally, right? I've got 2 kids in college, and the car payment and the house and taxes are coming up, right? And that's all you're thinking about. You're stuck in that fight or flight mode.
Well, and even the impact is different on every individual. So what I've experienced personally is going to be different than somebody else who's maybe next to me on the line or in the office over, or virtually that I work with. And with all the changes, whether it's what we see with FDA, but even some of the other changes that are happening related to immigration and DEI, those are places where everyone has had a different experience related to that. And when we use our experience, when we substitute our experience for theirs, we are shortchanging where they're at and not understanding. And so really, how as leaders do we even pause to say, how is this impacting you? We may not see it at work, because while Severance is a show, there is some level of people still looking at, how do I keep my work and personal life separate? And so some of those things going on behind the scenes are bubbling up professionally, and they should, right? It's the whole person. But as leaders, can we be sensitive and empathetic and compassionate enough to be able to make space for that and help people be there? We can't always move them, but can we create space to let them know, here you are, and we are here to hold you in this space as well.
Right. And that's a good point, because back to the Severance example, the team, the 4 individuals, who are working and actually doing the work in the company on this mysterious project, bond, and they become best friends, and they're trying to figure out what's going on, and you're on the journey with them. So kind of referencing back to what we talked about earlier, is everything's an opportunity, right? If you're able to step up and be that calm source of inspiration and say, hey, what's going on? How can I help you? And showing that you care, you're only going to strengthen those bonds with those individuals when you come through the other side.
Right. Exactly. It's also too, the people who leave, right? Like that bond doesn't just disappear. And I remember that I went through a restructuring and my mentor actually left the organization as a part of the restructuring. And we still kept in contact. And I remember after she left, it was maybe 6 months or so afterwards. And we were talking and it sticks in my mind. She said, this organization is not the only organization that has a good culture. And then it was like, oh, you're absolutely right. Like just that information, right, opened up possibilities for me. And that's a good thing, right? Obviously, it helped shape who I am today in my experience. And I'm very grateful for the different type of experiences I have in food. But I wouldn't have gotten that message internally, right? Because they're trying to retain me. Versus like people who have now seen other stuff. We now have different information to say there's more, right? There's more here. There's more to what we're working on. There's more, insert. But in this case, it was, okay, yeah, there's other places that value people and culture that might even be doing it better, right? That might even be able to give me a different type of development. And so it's like, even with changes that leadership does, whether it's layoffs or restructuring or elimination of full groups, that is an impact on the people. And the people talk. They talk with each other. They have formed these bonds. And if you as a leader do not have that foresight, right, does not have that empathy, compassion that Jill was talking about, you actually miss those opportunities. You actually miss those conversations that are happening around you that might be stopping your progress or not giving you the outcome that you thought would happen after you do these drastic changes.
Yeah. This too shall pass. And those people who may have been laid off in that scenario, and you're still there, right? So you've got some guilt around that. It's like, oh, geez, I'm still here, but everybody I worked with is gone. Guess what? They didn't disappear. They're still out there, right? And that is potential new connections and avenues of growth and development when they find new roles in new companies. You're going to wake up tomorrow, right? It's going to be okay. And it reminds me of an old story I heard. So there was a farmer and his wife, and they were laying in bed at night, and it was late, and the farmer was just tossing and turning in bed and just really irritating his wife. And so finally she's like, honey, what's wrong? And he turns to her and says, we're not going to make the mortgage payment this month. The crops aren't coming in on time. I just don't know what we're going to do. And so the wife goes, And so she picks up the phone and calls the banker in the middle of the night and says, Bob, we're not going to make the mortgage payment tomorrow, and hangs up the phone. And the farmer got really mad. And he said, why did you do that? And the wife goes, it's his problem now. Go back to sleep. Right? Interesting.
Well, that's communication.
Yeah.
Communication ahead of time. Hey, this is the reality we're facing. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that was someone who saw the problem and stepped up and said, I can do something here.
Right. And she was that calm-centered resource that said, okay, no, it's going to be okay, right? Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. And part of this, right, we need to look at what's going on within the government right now. And Scott Adams talked about this on his podcast. He said the United States is probably the only country in the history of the world that is able to break itself and then rebuild itself even better. Most companies break and then, countries break and then they're done, right? They become a new country. We don't do that. And part of the approach that Trump and Elon are taking during this process is a business approach. And that is, and we know this very well from what we do, is sometimes you have to break things really bad and then find out what you really need and then bring that back. And we're seeing that, right? There's like, you fired these people who control this super important thing. Oh, yeah, you're right. We shouldn't have. All right, yeah, bring them back, right? Okay. And that's very stressful. Right? People see that, we see it from a position of needing resources within those areas of government. They're looking, to your point, Tia, these are people that are going through all this stress. But part of this is recognizing the pattern and the process of what's going on. And unfortunately, in what we do, right, we're technical people and we like order and all these types of things. Well, during times of chaos, that's all out the window. Right? Which gets back to Joe's point. You have to prepare and practice and be ready mentally for these type of things.
Yeah. I think it's one of the things I 100% agree with you, Bryan, in the sense of this is definitely a business approach. You know, what we would say is that we have to do business differently, right? Like we have to be people centric. And we have seen this in businesses, right? And you're right. Some businesses don't come back from this. And we don't know what the other side of this looks like yet, right? Like we don't. We are going to find out because, like you said, we wake up every morning. So we will find out what's going to happen at the end. But as organizations, right, as leaders of organizations, we have to be people focused. It doesn't mean that we can't move forward with our goals. It doesn't mean that, we can't grow our organization. It doesn't mean that, we can't do layoffs when we need to. Like those things are a part of business. Yeah. But when you put people first and really think about their well-being, and really think about what is stressing them and really focus on your people, you will do things differently. And we need to do things differently. We see it in our retention numbers, right? We see it in our engagement numbers. We see it in the ability to even bring people into the organization. And eventually, right, people who have grown up in this type of leadership, they're eventually going to retire. And then we're going to have people who we have actually trained to say, don't take this from organizations, right? Don't take this from leaders. They're not going to take it, right? They're not going to be a part of it. And so we have, as leaders, we have to shift where we think about our people first, where we have to think about, we want this goal. How do we empower our people to do it? Or how do we set them up for success, even if they have to leave the organization? I remember a manager I had to let go of, and she knew she wasn't doing well there. I knew she wasn't doing well there, but I needed to focus on her as an individual, because if she loses her job, how is she going to afford the things that she needs, basic needs, right? And so when I'm having this conversation, as I'm really working through a PIP, we're also having conversations about what do you want to do next, right? It doesn't exist here for you. So what's next for you? How do I set you up for success, knowing you're going to transition out of the organization in 2 months? How do I support you going to your next step? The goals of the organization is still happening, right? We need someone in that role that understands food safety in a different way. Cool. That's what we're going to get. How do I take care of her? How do I take care of her as she transitions out of the organization? And we have to shift that thinking. It doesn't mean we cannot do our business goals. As a matter of fact, data shows that when we put people first, we succeed our business goals. Yeah. So we know that it works, right? We know it works. We have the data. There's full organizations that this is the only thing that they track out there. And so we have the data. We as people, we just need to build those skills and do it so that our people don't feel this stress and chaos and things that make us stop or freeze or fight.
Yep. And so 2 really important things in there that I want to bring people's attention to. Number one is there's a technique called, talking beyond the sale. You see Trump do this quite a bit. So what you're doing is you're allowing that person to refocus on, okay, well, what's your next challenge? What are you thinking about doing, right? You're moving that person's thought process past what's going on right now, right? We're going to be letting you go and you need to move on. But what do you want to do next? Let's talk about that, right? Oh, wow, I'd really like to do whatever, right? And now they're thinking about these things.
And how I can help you. Also, how can I help you get there? Not just think about what's next, but how as a leader can I help you actually get there?
Yep, as a person, that's really smart. And part of what I wanted to call it in our conversation here so far is notice what we're doing here as well. We're talking about detail one-on-one personal interactions and then going all the way up to what the government's doing. And we're coming back down and making that relevant to what we're talking about. So part of the key skill set with this is taking that abstract information and then extrapolating that into what you're doing and how that impacts you people that you work with, and then repeating that process. So kind of the next phase on this then is, of course, recalls, right? We've had some doozies so far, right, in 2024, 25. And, front of mind to everybody, of course, Boar's Head and some of the work that they're doing and, trying to turn that company around and the loss of public trust and all of those type of situations. Now overlay that with what we've been talking about with FDA's reaction. So then you can start thinking about this. And a good way to look at this is start thinking in terms of predictions. And predictions don't have to be yes or no. You can say a percentage, right? So for example, okay, well, we know so far that resources are being changed. There's lots of chaos going in the organizations within the government. People are being laid off or restructured in different ways. How is that going to impact FDA's ability to monitor or respond to potential issues in the food industry, right? That's going down. What does that potentially mean? Well, that means that recalls may actually be going up. What's the chance of that happening? I don't know, 35, 40%, maybe, who knows, right? But you're thinking about it, right? And so you're like, okay, well, if that's the case, how do I need to react to potentially protect what we do in my company and make sure that our consumers are safe?
Yep. Yeah. And if we are curious, Sean Stevens just released an article about looking at trends and recalls from 2024 and predicting 2025. So I don't remember, it came through on one of my feeds, but I don't remember exactly where it was, just that Sean wrote it.
Was it QA Magazine or something? It was, I saw it too. I don't recall what it was. If I find it, I'll put it in the locals group. It was a good article. Sean always writes good articles.
It was, but that goes back to that foresight as a leader, thinking about what does this mean for us and how does that impact people? What are they thinking? Because they're reading that in their feed too. And are they coming back to work going, oh no, what does this mean? Or are they like, wow, I'm glad we have things covered. Once again, it's all about engaging in the conversation.
Right? Well, and again, right, these crises situations can be opportunities as well. So now imagine you're working in a company and you're in the quality department, food safety, and you're communicating like we're doing right now. Senior leadership is going to look at that and say, that Tia, she does a really good job of thinking strategically. Keep an eye on her, right? Yeah. Because now you're just not reacting to every little thing that happens during the course of your workday. You're thinking about the future, and that's what leaders do.
Yeah. One thing I would add to, Bryan, as you think about, us as food safety going back into, the organization, thinking about what does this mean for my organization? When we talk about food safety culture specifically with people, we even try to remove compliance, right? Compliance is what we must do, right? Like that's like the basics. Right, exactly. That's just the fee to play. We like for organizations to think about, who are you? Who do you want to be? What are your standards, right? What are your standards that's above and beyond compliance? How do you want to show up? Even as simple as color coding. Do you want your whole organization to use black as trash, right? Is that how you want to show up, that everything is consistent across your organization around color coding? That might be important to your organization, right? That's who you are. And it doesn't matter if FDA exists or doesn't exist or comes here or talks or shows up at the door or let us know when they're coming. At the end of the day, this is who we are. This is what we stand for. And this is how we do business. And when we have conversations with organizations, and that's from a food safety culture, but also from just a culture, a people culture standpoint, is once you get crystal clear on who you are as an organization, what you value, right? What you care about, what kind of goals you chase after, then you don't need other people to tell you these things because it's already core to who you are as an organization. And then the people, right, come because they want to be a part of that mission. They want to be a part of these things. It aligns even with their own personal, values when an organization is super clear. So if you're at an organization and you're thinking, man, they're going to shift because of what's happening in regulatory, then typically your organization probably don't know who they are from a food safety standpoint. right? They don't know, or maybe they do, and it is compliance, right? And that's how like they like to roll. And that could be okay for them. It might not be okay for you, right? Like you would have to kind of have those conversations with yourself. But that's one thing that we talk about with organizations is like, who are you outside of FDA showing up to your facility or your customer giving you an audit, right? Like, who are you outside of that?
Yeah. Well, and part of that is the realization that, let's say that you have a big layoff in a company or something like this. It's not your fault, right? Sometimes the market conditions just change, right? A new product comes in, a new competitor shows up, and things just don't work out. That's not your fault, right?
Right. Yeah.
Move on. And there's a really good comment here right now that I think is why we do this chat, right? Is today's my last day due to the layoff, and I needed this chat. Thanks, Jill and Tia, right? So hopefully what we're talking about here today can help this person. And, if you're involved in these type of situations, back to your point, Jill and Tia, as well, is how can I help that person, right? And that's being able to do that's an amazing feeling. And that's part of our responsibilities as people, right? Is to help it. We need to drop the, I'm VP of whatever. No, right? You're still a person and you have people that work with you and for you and all these type of things. How can you help them? Right? That's super important.
Yes.
It is. And knowing that space, I think, is important too, because yesterday I was talking with someone who said, I really want to move up further in our organization and be seen as a leader. And I said, well, what are you doing today? They described things like, I've helped us navigate our SQF audits well. We've added not just the food safety part, but quality. And I've done all this work, but yet they're still struggling to see me as a leader. And so what we really talked about is how we are multidimensional. And often when we're in food safety, we kind of put ourselves in this spot where we are the technical expert. Well, that makes it hard for people outside this arena to see that we are more than that.
Yeah.
Right.
And so as we think about handling crisis communication and uncertainty, that's where this really takes that intention to say, if I want to be seen more than just the one who says, this is compliance, this is a requirement, this is regulatory, then we need to step into that space.
Yes.
And how to do that. And so actually, those were some of the questions that I posed to this person. Well, what does that look like? What do you think is important for your development? And they chose some items, like they said, well, I need to know more about regulatory environment and regulatory and regulations. And I said, how does that position you to be a better leader? And so when we think about what we value to be able to support the organization through these times, how can we be more curious about what are those skills that are going to help us in that space? And it might be hard, but letting go of some of the things that have been our steadfast places we grow, right? Intentional adulteration, all of those things are really important. Regulatory, cybersecurity, those are fantastic and good to know. But as a leader, you also have people on your team who can support you with those things.
Right.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It is helping us be more multidimensional in our roles as leaders when we can step into that space.
Yes. Yes.
And so with the layoff comments here, as well, is we talk about this here on the chat as well, is that we have a loyalty beyond companies, right? Because we're protecting people and we're making sure that food is safe and all these things that we talk about. That means that we have kind of this big, fraternity that we're all in, right? And so we all step up and help. So definitely, as we see here in the comments, so Joe Sophia is talking about Alexis Kennedy, right, with the layoff. Help her, right? We all know people, and that's as you get older in your career, right? Me as a seasoned QA guy, your contacts and the people side of it becomes more and more important. And as you look back, you're like, man, I wish I would have learned this lesson earlier. And the technical side of stuff is great, and you need to know all that things, but that's not what moves the needle.
No, and I think, Brian, even like you said, a layoff, that's not you, that's the organization, but it's still, I'm sure a full range of emotions are coming up as you're in that space. So as you said, the more as a community we can support, the better. And I'm going to put a plug in, Chelsea Tyus. If you follow her, she tags so many roles. So she's a great connection.
She really is.
How do you spell her name?
Chelsea, CHELSEA TYUS.
EYUS. I'll put her name in here for people.
Mhm.
There we go. Hopefully I got that right.
Yes.
Boink.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
So part of this, right, from the people side, and then we'll kind of go to the wrap up here at the end, is we don't know what's going on in other people's heads, right? So if you're out in the plant floor one day and you're talking to somebody that you normally talk to and they snap at you, okay, what's going on, right? Your first reaction is to snap back. Oh yeah, well, yeah, double damn you too. And then you damage that relationship. You don't know what that person's going through. Let's say that his child is sick, or maybe they're going through a divorce, or something is happening that you have no idea about. Try and put yourself in their shoes and say, okay, that's not a normal reaction for this person. Something's probably going on. Yes. And then, developing those skills, right? Obviously, you aren't going to immediately turn around and say, what the hell's up with you? What's wrong? Right? That's not appropriate either. Right? So building out those skills, very important.
It is. And practicing that, right? Because like what you said, it's a natural human reaction that if someone comes at you, you're ready to go at them. Yeah. Right. But to get your mind to reframe it and say, wow, something's going on. I need to ask about that. Yeah. I need to ask about it and say, hey, like our interaction was a little different. Is something going on, or what's going on? Yeah. How can I help you?
Yeah. And even it's like, oh, wow. Yeah. And that can deflate that situation. And then they go, yeah, you're right. Sorry. And then you can have a conversation. So we're at the less than the 5-minute mark. So let's kind of summarize this for everybody. Fantastic conversation. I think a really timely one. What type of takeaways would you like to leave everyone with here today?
I would say the first one is being people-centric as leaders. We truly believe that there's no business problem that cannot be solved with better leadership. Yeah. And if we are focused on our people, we will hit our goals. We will hit our goals without someone feeling like they're unworthy, or without them being stressed and overworked and burnt out, or without them taking work home and creating issues outside of work. We can do that as leaders. And it starts with building those skills and practicing and honing in on them, so we are ready for those situations. And if you are in that situation right now, which many of us are, just because of the stuff that's happening around us, take the time to get the development you need so we can stop hurting other people in this process. So that's what I would say is number one.
Well said.
Yeah. I think Tim has actually hit on a little bit of what I would take away with as well, that, it starts with you. Mm-hmm. So when you say, gosh, I wish it was different, or how do we navigate through this? That's a great time to lean in. And you can do it with transparency. Gosh, I'm a little nervous to step into this space, but I see we have questions. How can we facilitate answers together?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. There are ways we can do that. And I'm going to pull from Brené Brown. Clear is kind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When we try to do the messaging around the messaging because we're trying to message around something we don't know, not clear. So as a leader, the best thing we can do is be clear, because that is kind. That is showing with heart.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Even if it's clear that you can't share details, right? That is still clear. That's still transparency.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Here's what I know. Mm-hmm. You know what I know. So I think from my perspective too, as we kind of summarize this as well, is with all this crisis and chaos, we're in a unique position in what we do. It's an opportunity, right? We're able to step up and help as leaders from a business and, more importantly, the personal side of things. So I think we've got some really, really important lessons here today. So next week, I'm very excited about this. Next week, we are doing a webinar with all kinds of cool people. Yes. And so I'm on this. You guys are on it. So we've got the team from Don't Eat Poop. So we've got Francine and Dr. Darren Detweiler. Dr. D is going to be on there. And so, of course, Mr. Ragusi as well. Matt's going to be on there too. Yes. So this is going to be next Wednesday. This is going to be a lot of fun. And if you didn't see the invite for the live stream, I'll put it here in the chat so that everybody's got that. There we go. There's that guy. And also, I wanted to put in here the link for your new website for Catalyst Food Leaders because it absolutely looks fantastic.
Yes, sign up. We have an announcement coming out next week. It came out in our community yesterday, and I'll share it here with your group. But we're hosting a leadership summit for people in food. There's never been one just for people in food, and that's going to be April 2nd. So stay tuned. Jump on our email list because then you'll get the link to be able to sign up.
Yes, we're so excited about this because we have amazing speakers. We're lining up some amazing speakers within the food space to talk about leadership.
Nice. Congratulations on that. Very good.
Thank you.
With that, we'll bring our chat to a close here for this week. Jill and Tia, thank you. This was a fantastic, I think a very timely conversation here today. Yes. So everybody, take a deep breath, right? It's going to be okay, right? It's the banker's problem now.
And thank you all to the audience. And Bryan, thanks for having us on as well. We certainly enjoy being here and this interaction. Thank you.
It is so cool seeing a lot of the same names and stuff coming up in our chats and things like this. And even though some of those people we haven't met face to face, that's a hint for a quiz, by the way. We still feel like we have, right? So that's super cool. So of course, next week we'll be here again, right? So live on LinkedIn and YouTube, where we live stream every week on Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, while I will bring some super cool kick butt guests like Jill and Tia on the show to talk about our next quality and food safety topic. But in the meantime, have a good weekend. Enjoy yourself, relax, recharge, and we'll do it all again next week. So thanks, everybody. Have a good one. Thanks, Jill and Tia. Bye, everyone.